Facebook. This is it. This is your shining moment to get your Tuesday high noon with Jeffrey Peterson, who has opened for Cheech and Chong. Nobody else can say they've opened for both Cheech and Chong, but he can. Jeffrey Peterson has. He's even opened for the amazing Willie Nelson. He's a legend. Jeffrey Peterson has been around the country, opening up for tons more than just Cheech and Chong and Willie Nelson. So let's go to him. He's been doing some research during this downtime. How you doing this high noon, Jeffrey?
I'm doing great. I love your setup there. I can see my comic books right there in the back. That's awesome.
Yeah, you can get them on Cali Chronic Comics.
Yep. And that's my title, The Achievers, my Big Lebowski themed comic book. I don't know if you've read it, but it's an homage to the Big Lebowski.
Yes.
And really like a love letter to Jeff Bridges, because I think Jeff Bridges is the best.
Isn't he?
Jeff Bridges is my favorite. Yeah. And
I love him.
So if you notice, I cleaned up a little bit.
You did.
I decided, some friends noticed I was looking a little haggard, so I was like, you know what, I don't just because I am 52 doesn't mean I have to look 72. So I decided to get my baby face on. And our subject matter that we've been having fun with for the last 2 weeks is why I love sitcoms so much, and especially failed sitcoms.
Yes.
But today I'm going to reveal my top 10 favorite regular famous shows of all time, not failed, just the famous ones. That'll be at the end. I'll reveal my favorite ones. But in the time we talked, I mean, wow, you interviewed Bill Kirchenbauer, TV legend, right? And I mean, if you're a sitcom fanatic like me, we were just talking about, Mork and Mindy, Fernwood Tonight, and of course, Just the 10 of Us, which was the spinoff from Growing Pains. He was on Growing Pains. And so that was wonderful. And speaking of Growing Pains, folks, strap in. This gets really nerdy. I am a TV fanatic. So I'm going to be just dropping names of shows and people, and it's only pertinent to people that are as TV nerdy as us. So this is what they made TV Land for people like us. TV Land. I remember when it came out, I was like, oh, my favorite sitcoms? What? So where else was I going to see the Brady Brides, which was a great show, spinoff. So we were talking about Just the 10 of Us and Growing Pains. Now, you guys may remember on Growing Pains, Julie McCullough got on the show toward the end. She's the Playboy Playmate, who is a wonderful actress and a dear friend of mine. I came across a gem on just flipping around. I keep finding new stuff because of this that I didn't get to see. So for someone as nerdy as me, this is like Netflix. Like, to find this stuff is like, I don't need new shows per se. I've got a billion old shows to look at. And I found Julie McCullough in a gem. Revenge of the Nerds, the TV pilot that never aired.
Wow.
Can you believe that? Revenge of the Nerds was huge. They made 3 movies of that, and it didn't. But here was the other cool part about the show. I'm lo and behold, I will see somebody that I know in it, another person. Booger, the Curtis Armstrong character that was so popular, is being played by Robbie Rist, Cousin Oliver from the Brady Bunch.
What?
Yeah, and he does a phenomenal job. Robbie is a good friend. He's a buddy of mine who's done my show many times, The Dopest Show on Earth. A phenomenal musician and actor. And at the time, when he was a kid, he was the #1 child actor in America on TV. But he played a real rock and roll version of Booger. And I actually hit up Julie and Robbie via Facebook because they're friends of mine. And I said, I found this gem you were in that nobody saw. And they were like, oh, my God, I can't believe you found that. And Robbie was so nice. He said he realized he could never be as good as Curtis Armstrong as Booger. But I said, dude, you nailed it. You played TV Booger like Robbie Riss style. So it was very cool. So if you get a chance, if you're a fan of Revenge of the Nerds, I highly recommend that you check out Revenge of the Nerds, the pilot that never aired.
I'll be darned.
It's so cool. So yeah, and I realized that I was not thorough last time on some shows that I was talking about spin-offs and stuff like that. I forgot some of the most famous spin-offs that are some of my favorite TV shows. How could I have forgotten when I was talking about Happy Days and Love American Style, Mork and Mindy?
Thank you.
Mork and Mindy was a phenomenal show that, as a kid, I mean, I had Mork shirts. I watched the Mork cartoon. I was like, Shazbot, Nanu Nanu. I was into the whole thing. And then when the show later on, they really jumped the shark, as they call it in Happy Days terms. That means doing a stunt on the show that seems so crazy. It just might work. They got Jonathan Winters to play their son, Murph.
What? No way.
And in Orkin, you grow backwards. You go from an old man to a baby. So he was a grown-up man that was a baby. And it was, I mean, Robin Williams, his idol is Jonathan Winters. And here's Jonathan Winters, one of our greatest comedic actors ever, on a TV show. It was just, what?
Oh
I loved it. I loved it. So, if you guys, and then I forgot one of the other greatest spin-offs of all time, spun off from the Beverly Hillbillies and Petticoat Junction. Green Acres is the place to be.
That came from that?
It did. It came from Petticoat Junction.
I did not know that.
Which came from Beverly Hillbillies.
My gosh.
Because they're related to Jed. Yeah, so these shows just spin off of each other. But Green Acres, oh my God. Mr. Ziffel and Arnold the Pig. I mean, that show, Mr. Douglas, you have, Mr. Haney and Mr. Kimball, I loved that show. That was they had the Monroe brothers, a girl named Ralph. That was just ridiculous. And but Eddie Arnold and of course Ava Gabor. It was just one of the greatest TV shows of all time. You could turn on Green Acres at any time and just, oh my God, this is so ridiculous and so funny.
It still stands the test of time today.
It does. I love Green Acres. And then I forgot another great sitcom. One of my favorite sitcoms of all time. It will be probably coming up on this list is Barney Miller. Barney Miller was just, tremendous show that was very adult. I remember that as a kid, very adult. I was not really supposed to watch Barney Miller and I didn't know why. And now as an adult, when I watch it, I'm like, oh, this is why. They're talking about adult themes. Well, that had a spinoff, Fish. That's right. Phil Fish, Detective Phil Fish, Abe Vigoda had a foster home. He and Bernice had a foster home, and they raised these unruly kids, including Todd Bridges and a few others. And it was very silly. It was very silly, and that's a fun show if you were a Barney Miller fan. And I can't believe I was talking about all the Mary Tyler Moore spinoffs. There's so many of them. I forgot the biggie of all, Lou Grant.
The Lou Grant show?
Yeah, Lou Grant was probably almost as big as the Mary Tyler Moore show. I mean, it was a hugely popular show. And it was kind of interesting because it was not a sitcom. It was an hour format that had a comedic kind of thing going through it. But it was Lou Grant as I believe, a head of a newspaper. Yeah. And instead of a television news. So that was a hugely popular show. I don't know if you remember.
I do remember it. I just don't remember the specifics. like you do.
Yeah.
Which is why
So
you're on here talking and I'm not.
I know. And it's, like I said, folks, this is really nerdy stuff. But um, of my favorite, we're talking about failed sitcoms. Right now, the last 2 days, I've been immersed in Whoopi, which was a show from 2003, which I liked. Whoopi Goldberg's show, very progressive show. It was very silly. Whoopi is a staunch liberal, so for me to watch it, it's funny. It's like when people would watch Archie Bunker to see how right wing he was. I kind of crack up at Whoopi watching just how liberal she is on this show. And when you watch some of these shows from, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, you see they're talking about subject matter that is happening now. It's so predictive. It's really spooky because they were talking about the SARS. I posted something. They were talking about SARS, how it's affecting everybody on the sitcom. And one of the characters says, "Don't you know that every one of these viruses come from China?"
Whoa. Holy
Predictive
Toledo.
programming. So it's pretty interesting. But Whoopi's a really great show. And I have an interesting television experience with Whoopi. Through my animation experience, I acquired a video that had Whoopi recording her voice for The Storyteller with Macaulay Culkin, the animated movie. Well, Whoopi kind of is free and easy and talks about how she loves to smoke marijuana and grow her own marijuana, and how she was high when she accepted the Oscar for Ghost. And it was funny because I ended up getting that tape to Harvey Levin, and the famous tape that you could see on YouTube from TMZ came from me. I outed Whoopi Goldberg because I really felt like she wasn't really doing us too much of a service by being on The View and not talking about cannabis. So if you notice, after 2011, after that aired, Whoopi became a huge cannabis activist and entrepreneur, made millions off of cannabis.
Wow.
She could thank me for that.
She should kick you down some ends, both kinds.
Right. She would probably sue me, to be honest with you, or try to. But the whole thing is she definitely benefited from it. I mean, I was living in Denver in 2014, and here she is, one of the writers for the Denver Post. She writes The Cannabist. I mean, now all of a sudden she knows everything about pot. Well, where were you before? So that's precisely why I did it, because I kind of have a gripe with celebrities that just jump in and, like Jim Belushi, another sitcom star, according to Jim, Jim Belushi, I like him, but he swooped in recently and said he's a cannabis grower. And all of a sudden now, he's benefiting from it, but he's never once spoken up for it or tried to help people that are in prison for it. That's the problem. We're in this very protesty, cause-driven era. I'm a cannabis activist, and we need to free our cannabis prisoners. It's so sad, not to go off on a tangent, but with all this COVID stuff, they released a lot of prisoners from jail because jails were full, and they were afraid that would exasperate this virus. They didn't specifically release cannabis offenders, and that offends us. Wow. They released rapists. They released felons of all kinds, but they did not specifically release people who have been in jail for cannabis, and that needs to be brought up. No one has really thought about them, and so if you're going to release people from jail, release them first.
Absolutely.
And let the rapists and pedophiles stay in jail. So, but back to the failed sitcoms I love. I'm veering here.
I digress all the time.
Yeah,
I'm
a segue guy. I wish I had a segue. That would be fun. Yeah, so Whoopi is a show I would recommend. Very funny. She's got like a bunch of great guest stars on it and stuff. I'm the one I was just watching at Patrick Swayze, which was like, wow. So that's the really the neat part about these failed shows is a lot of times they have big celebrities on there that are you wouldn't expect to see on a TV show. They use their star power to do that.
Yes.
But my top 10 failed sitcoms of all time, I didn't even mention these, but I'm just going to go off with them pretty quickly. Some of which you can either see on Comedy Central or Hulu or YouTube. If you're into this stuff, just look up the names after I name them, and you folks can really enjoy some great shows. One of my favorite shows on Hulu, Party Down. Party Down is a hilarious sitcom about people in the catering world. It's just so funny. I used to be a caterer, so it's a lot of funny stuff happens behind the scenes in catering.
Wow.
Halfway Home is a really funny show on Comedy Central that failed. It has oh God, I just forgot her name. A famous actress. It'll come to me in a minute, but that's a show about people that are parolees. They're released from jail, so they're in a halfway home. Happy Family is Christine Baranski and John Larroquette, one of the best sitcoms of all time. You never saw it. It's called Happy Family. It's on YouTube. Men Behaving Badly, Rob Schneider's show. That was very funny. Welcome to New York, also with Christine Baranski. She's so wonderful. And Jim Gaffigan. This was Jim Gaffigan's vehicle on CBS. It was so funny. Sarah Gilbert, a bunch of people are in it.
My gosh.
Rob, another Rob Schneider vehicle. This time, Cheech Marin, my favorite guy. Cheech is his father-in-law. Yeah, so he's like, he's got a Mexican family to deal with, which is crazy. I know what that's like. I was married to a Mexican for 12 years, and I survived with having no children and my penis fully intact. So there you go. And Square Pegs, one of the greatest shows of all time. Sarah Jessica Parker came from there. Square Pegs is kind of the New York version of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It's a really funny sitcom. Bill Murray's in an episode. Square Pegs is really great. Day by Day was a really funny show. Day by Day.
I remember that. What was it
Christopher
though?
Barnes. That was it was a family that had a daycare center, and their son Ross was kind of a wild guy. It was very funny. That was a good show. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is in the cast of that, and so is oh gosh, I'll remember her name. It's the gal from Melrose Place.
Tori?
So no, the blonde gal from Melrose Place, who was on 3.5 Men, 2.5 Men.
The cute little one.
Yeah, I'll remember her name in a minute.
Yeah.
See, that's my brain is overloaded with stuff. But Free Ride is one of the best shows you could see. Free Ride is that that is a really funny show, and my buddy Dave Sheridan is the star of that. Dave Sheridan is a talent that you've seen in tons of movies, but you didn't know who he was. So if you get a chance, Free Ride, very funny. Alan Havey, the comedian's in that. And then last but not least on this list, it's almost impossible to find. I have a few copies, but there's a show called American Body Shop that was on Comedy Central. And it was about a body shop in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And my buddy John DiResta, the great comedian John DiResta, is on there. Brooklyn Johnny and Nick Offerman. It's kind of where Nick Offerman got his start. No one knew that Nick Offerman was going to be such a huge star, but there he is. Now he's really famous.
Yeah.
He talks in those syncopated ways. So yeah, there's those are my 10 favorite shows you never heard of. Every one of them are just gems. They're hilarious. You know, you could spend so much time just like diving back into these great shows. And uh, another quick list I want to give you guys: my buddy Chris Chiari, who was recently featured on Portals to Hell on
Yep.
with Jack Osborne. He owns the famous Peterson Inn in Denver, which is the the number one haunted hotel in America. Well, he got me to thinking of my favorite shows, sitcoms. There's a bunch of them, but just a few of them are great. Whoopi is one of them because she owns a hotel in New York. But uh, these are shows that are based around people that own hotels, sitcoms. Of course, Faulty Towers with John Cleese, one of the most famous sitcoms of all time. You ever seen Faulty Towers?
Never.
Oh my God. Go to YouTube. Faulty Towers, one of the greatest sitcoms of all time. English. It's an English sitcom. Uh, it, and that show was so influential, it spawned three other American versions of that. There was one called Amanda's by the Sea, starring B. Arthur, Maud, and from the Golden Girls, Dorothy. She had a show that was where she was a hotel owner. Very funny. You can see that on YouTube, Amanda's by the Sea. And then there was one with Betty White and oh my gosh, what's his face? It's a really funny show called Snavely.
No way.
Snavely. It's so yeah, and it's Harvey Korman, and it's Betty White and Harvey Korman. Very funny, very funny. And then John Larroquette is back with Joe Beth Williams in a really funny show called Pain, which is an American version of Faulty Towers as well. So, and then of course, my favorite of all those kind of hotel shows, Golden Palace with Cheech Marin, Don Cheadle. I've told you guys about that, how much I love that show. So, yeah, this is how I spend my time. You know, besides doing other stuff, I'm just a TV fanatic.
It's so cool to hear this. I hope that when people listen to this, they go try. We have a lot of extra time right now to do this.
Yeah, and also too, it's with history being destroyed the way it is nowadays. Like, see this stuff before it's gone forever, because they're really. I mean, it's really hard to believe how daunting show business is and Hollywood in general. But to have sitcoms that, you know, you think you've made it, you got a sitcom, and then, you know, I just mentioned John DeResta from American Body Shop. He had his own show called DeResta. You know, Sue Costello, the comedian I interact with from New York, she had a show called Costello. I mean, like, you know, you finally get your own name, but not everybody's going to be Seinfeld. You know, not everybody gets to be Seinfeld, you know, but so, like I said to you, Seinfeld, when it first came out, the Seinfeld Chronicles, it almost failed. It was like, people weren't really loving it.
Yeah, it took a while for, you know, when you listen to a new style of comedy or a new person or a new show, it takes a while to get over a hump to where people have to get the vibe of it first.
Right. You know, and especially if you're new. But, you know, what's interesting is a lot of times you'd think being a big name star, that'll instantly draw people to you. You know, like I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Dudley Moore had a show called Dudley, which was very funny. But how does Dudley Moore fail? I mean, like, how does the show with Dudley Moore? Dudley Moore was huge. You know what I mean? It's like, so we forget some of these stars were just like huge stars, and then they try to get a sitcom, and they get no respect. It just doesn't work. Bette Midler had a show, you know, called Bet. No one watched it.
Really? Oh my goodness! Yeah. I didn't know that.
So yeah, so here we go. Drum roll. So I don't just take up the whole show. We're probably at that time. Here's my top 10 favorite shows of all time.
Yes, let's do this.
In the sitcom world. I'm going to go backwards.
According to you.
According to me. According to me, a guy that's a TV nerd. These are my top favorites. So you might see some that you like. You dated him once. Come on, Keith Partridge. The Partridge Family is just one of the best sitcoms ever. It's so funny. The comedic timing is just hilarious. It's well written. just silly, and if you go for the ride, it's a great show. Plus, you got tremendous songs. You know what I mean? David Cassidy was just very, very talented, very funny, and he and Danny Bonaducci were just like gold together.
That's
And
is that number 10? Are we going
that's
from
number
10
10. That's number
okay.
10. Unfortunately, Susan Day was the meanest celebrity I've ever met.
Really?
Her and Robert Cray. But anyways, I digress. Number 9, a spinoff, sort of, not really. You just can't deny Larry. Curb Your Enthusiasm. Pretty
Such
good.
a good show.
What a jerk. The ultimate jerk. Larry is the biggest asshole ever, and I love him. He just, to watch him just maneuver through life and just piss everybody off, I feel like maybe I'm not so bad when I watch Larry. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm not as much of a jerk as someone like Larry, But he's a rich jerk, so and there's no bones about that. He's a millionaire jerk. So very funny show. If you haven't seen the sensation that is Curb, I mean, my God, watch it. This last season when they added Vince Vaughn, even got funnier, a lot of good stuff. But it's all about Leon. It's all about JB Smoove, Leon, because he's hilarious. He's hilarious. You gotta love Leon. And number 8, John Lithgow. How could we have gotten John Lithgow, the great actor, one of my favorite actors, to be in a sitcom, Third Rock from the Sun? My God. Thank you, Mark Brazil, for writing some great episodes. That is just a tremendous show. He and Jane Curtin, just magic together. And what a cast! What a ride when you watch the whole series. I mean, you've got William Shatner as the big giant head. You've got John Cleese in there. You've got over the years they had so many great guest stars and people just doing silly stuff. So Third Rock from the Sun, one of the best shows ever, just ridiculous. Number 7, Barney Miller. You mentioned it. Barney Miller, just that was the kind of the beginning of the one room TV show. They did it with Cheers, they did it with Taxi. Shows that take place in one room. They never really went outside of that room, hardly ever. So that's a tough thing to pull off, and they did. So Barney Miller, one of the highest regarded TV shows, was on for 8 seasons. I mean, just one of the best shows ever. And speaking of Mark Brazil, again, the real Eric Foreman, our buddy, he was the real Eric Foreman on That 70s Show. That 70s Show was fantastic. One of the best shows. Loved it right when it came out. Still, it only got better when Tommy Chong joined the group as Leo. I mean, it just
That was so good. That was
how great is that? And the different celebrities over the years and stuff. And Mark Brazil told me a secret that I now look at the show differently. That is not really Gene Simmons singing with Charo. That is a Gene Simmons impersonator.
Wow.
And it fooled me. I was like, no, I was a gigantic Kiss fan. And I was like, no. I mentioned my buddy Chris Chiari from Portals to Hell. He was an extra on the episode with where they're at the school prom. So you can look for him in the background there, Chris Chiari. And my number 5th favorite show of all time, Bob Newhart, the Bob Newhart show.
I love that show.
I mean, come on, Dr. Robert Hartley. I mean, what a good, it's a very comforting show to watch. I mean, he was a real, a different type of a guy. He and his wife didn't have any children, which was kind of different for TV at that time. Adults that are, in the business world or, in Chicago in a big city and they don't have any children specifically. That was kind of different. And so many funny characters as Patience, Mr. Peterson and
the nurse.
Yep.
Who the hell was that lady at the desk?
Carol. That was Carol. Yeah, that was Carol.
Stole that
Carol
show.
And Jerry. Yep. And so they had so many funny people on there. Another great show that you can see on Netflix. It's an English sitcom. and really one of the best shows of all time. It's called The IT Crowd. You've got to see The IT Crowd. It had 4 seasons. It is just knockdown funny. It is just so good. You got to check it out. It's got Matt Berry in it, who's on What We Do in Shadows right now, and so you got to definitely check that out. It's called The IT Crowd. They tried to make an American version with Joel Hale, and it did not go well. There's a sitcom pilot out there of an American IT Crowd. Stunk. Did not do good. So here we go, down to my big three. Number 3 of my favorite sitcoms of all time. You know, I love the English version of this very much, and it really should be on this list somewhere. The Office is just such a great show. And I really do balance the two. The English Office with Ricky Gervais is just hilarious. It's only had 2 seasons, and it's just knockdown funny. It's so just clever, really clever. He and Stephen Merchant are brilliant writers. But you can't Michael Scott, I mean, it's hard to, Steve Carell is just so ridiculous. And I love the characters in The Office and the American version. If you watch the whole thing, very well made show that they actually didn't forget that they were filming a documentary the whole time. They're being filmed like they're doing interviews and stuff. So at the very end of the show, in its 9th season, they actually have a screening of the 9 years that they've been filming. And so it's very well thought out, on Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant's part. But over the years, I mean, you had Idris Elba as one of the bosses. You had James Spader. You had Will Ferrell. I mean, just ridiculous characters and actors that showed up on The Office. So that's easy to find on Netflix anytime and Hulu. So definitely watch The Office. And furthermore, number 2, come on, one of the longest running shows of all time, one of the greatest shows. It's really an institution. Cheers.
How many years did that run?
That was on 11 years. Cheers was on 11 seasons. It was tremendous. What a phenomenal show. It only got better with age. It was very good at the beginning, but it really, when they got Kirstie Alley and Woody Harrelson and like I said before, I loved Fraser Crane on that show. Didn't really like him on Frasier. It was just very, very funny. George Wendt, John Ratzenberger, everybody, and of course, Rhea Perlman. I mean, they just were, what a cast. I mean, and all put together with Ted Danson, who was, one of the greatest characters of all time, Sammy Mayday Malone. So Cheers was also part of that one room type of show, like Barney Miller or Taxi, like pretty much took place only in that bar. You very rarely saw them go outside of it. So what a tremendous show. Cheers. If you haven't immersed yourself and see, that's the great thing. We talk about binge watching nowadays. People love to binge watch all these new shows. Binge watch one of these sitcoms. You'll see the ride that they took over the years. It's really interesting, and
that's amazing.
Yep. And here it is, number 1. I mean, come on. TV Guide called it the number 1 sitcom of all time, the number 1 TV show of all time. Seinfeld. I mean, you just can't beat, Seinfeld, master of your domain, I mean, there's so many catchphrases that came from Seinfeld. It became a phenomenon, it really did. And great ensemble cast, of course. We see Curb Your Enthusiasm. We realize that Jason Alexander just does a really great Larry David. That's all he was doing the whole time was Larry David, because Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld created Seinfeld. And the thing that makes Seinfeld so great is that Jerry is not a great actor. he's just so he's just having fun the whole time within his own world. and it's such a great world to be part of. But season 9, the last season, they are just at their stride. They're so great. I was very fortunate to sit in the audience for the Frogger episode with Peter Stormare, and the third to the last episode ever of Seinfeld. I was in the audience for that, and that was tremendous. So there you go. My favorite shows of all time. I know it's been an exhausting ride, folks.
No, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for bringing light to it. We
and I love these shows, and if you're taking notes, check them out. They're so good, and on the social networks, give me some feedback. Let me know the shows you like. I'd love to hear from you guys, and we'll keep some dialogue going. And next week I'll have a whole nother theme. I'll be talking about the comedy of rock and roll.
Whoa.
So we'll be talking about that. And so this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Jeffrey Peterson, the Cali Chronic Comics, COMIX, Cali Chronic Comics.com to get his illustrated books that are comic books and coloring books and have stories in them, actual plots, not just little snippets.
They do. And if you love The Big Lebowski, you'll even love this more. So because it's a unofficial sequel to The Big Lebowski is basically what it is. Wow. So thanks again for having me on this format. I know
I love this. Thank you for coming on.
I know it's exhaustive. There's nobody that you're going to meet that's going to talk this much about TV shows, but really, folks, if all you need is YouTube, and you've got tons of great stuff to watch. So get out there and check them out.
We got time and it's free. Let's do it. Take it from Jeffrey Peterson. Thank you,
all
Jeffrey.
Right, see you next Tuesday.
Thank you so much.
You got it.
Bye. Love you lots.
Bye-bye. Love you.
Everybody's